I did not do this in a minute, but I know I probably did it like 28 times. But anyways, what's up guys? It's Super Stancy. Your name is Stefan. So I'm about to do this. It's great. I can't believe what my husband did to me. Okay. You don't like beating up girls, especially if you go out with them.
My name is Samantha. I'm just a regular woman with a husband and 2 kids. I met my husband at the high school we both attended, and we got married after graduation. I got pregnant shortly after, and had to get a cesarean section during my delivery. Luckily, both babies and I are in good health. We have been living a happy life. However, something creepy happened to me a few days ago. Well, Kate became crazy. Kate was one of my best friends since high school, and I've always known her to be a nice, shy, and pretty quiet girl. A few weeks ago, we had our school reunion. I met my classmates again after about 10 years since graduation. Everything went fine, and we had a good time until Kate joined us. When she came in, she looked like she hadn't slept in several weeks and smelled really bad. Everyone just stood there, frozen, until Kate took out a knife from her pocket. Everyone screamed, and then she ran towards my direction. "Samantha, you'll die for what you did to me." All of a sudden, the police entered through the big glass sliding door and jumped on Kate. The chills hit me as she growled like a dog. Then the police said that she had some kind of mental problem and just escaped from a mental asylum a few hours ago. I had no idea what was wrong with her, and I was just wondering what had happened to her. And I felt really sorry for her because she had changed so much. A few days later, someone called me on my phone. It was an old lady claiming that she was a nurse at the local mental asylum. She wanted to talk to me about something related to Kate. Since I had nothing
I don't get it. What is about the husband stuff?
to do, I decided to visit the asylum. As soon as I got there, the old lady greeted me, and she guided me into a room divided by a window, like the meeting rooms in jails. On the other side, there she was, Kate. She was tied up to a chair. I could hear her continuously mumble. Then the old woman walked in and said, "She is here, sweetie." As Kate slowly looked up and into my eyes, she started to scream at me with wide open and bloody big eyes. "They are mine. You stole them. You must suffer for it." I didn't understand what was happening. What was Kate talking about?
Okay, what is about this?
Then the old lady returned next to me and said, "Miss Samantha, you have a husband and 2 kids, right?" I nodded. She sighed and then whispered, "Well, I have to say this. One of them is not yours." My heart sank as she continued. "You said that you had a cesarean section before, but half of your memory is not true. One boy is her kid. To be more specific, he's Kate and your husband's son. Just after she gave birth, she got a huge shock and threw her baby to the ground, which eventually made the workers in the hospital suspect that she was not stable. That's why she has been in this room since that very day, except for a few days ago, when she escaped to the reunion, back to the kids. Since Kate was locked in this place, your husband took the kid. He She fooled you to believe that both are your kids. Kate finally noticed that her baby was gone, so she escaped from here to find you and your husband.
Oh, I get it now. She wanna kill her because she thought she took her baby, but the husband lied and thought that she had 2 kids. So the girl that going crazy don't know the husband, her best friend's husband put the baby around. Bruh.
I just stood there in a state of shock, just staring at her empty eyes. My husband was a kind person, but now I finally realized that he lied to me and even cheated on me with my ex-best friend. I returned to my home, and since then, I haven't told anyone about this yet. Well, to be more specific, I couldn't. Both my kids still believe that I'm their real mom. If I reveal to my husband the fact that I know all of this, my family will be ruined. So, what should I do?
That's a bad husband for real. And then you got another wife.
This happened when I was around 7 years old. My parents have been divorced since I was 4, and I stayed with my mom. 3 years later, when my mom got married again, we moved out of our small apartment and rented a bigger one. It was pretty nice. It had a huge living room that was connected to a kitchen with no doors, so I could see the inside of the kitchen while I was sitting in the living room. As we were about to spend our first night in the new apartment, I decided to stay in the living room alone and watch some TV before going to bed. 1 or 2 hours later, I finally got tired and began dozing off. However, as soon as I began to fall asleep, I started hearing noises coming from the kitchen. It sounded as if the cabinets were opening, the plates were being moved around, and knives were being sharpened. At first, I thought that my mom was in the kitchen, but when I opened my eyes and turned around, there was no one there. I even got up and went to the kitchen, and as I turned on the lights, everything was in its place. So I tried going back to sleep. But after all that, I kept waking up due to several nightmares. Sometimes I would even beg my stepdad to stay with me until I fell asleep, but he didn't hear any noises coming from the kitchen and didn't take me too seriously. Well, this went on until we started smelling something weird inside the living room. It wasn't as bad at first, but as the days went by, the stench got worse. It smelled as if something inside the living room. It wasn't as bad at first, but as the days went by, the stench got worse. It smelled as if something was rotting. We turned the whole house upside down trying to find the source of it, until we realized it was coming from the wall. We figured that a rat or something died inside the wall, so we hired someone to get that thing out of there. But what the guy told us was shocking. There was no space in the wall. It was all brick. Furthermore, the only thing that was behind the wall was the outside. At that moment, my parents remembered the noises I heard and the nightmares. They asked a priest to come visit us and pray for the house. So when he arrived at our house, he prayed and sprayed some holy water around, but it didn't seem to do anything. A few weeks later, my mom went into labor and had my baby brother. He would cry so much in his sleep that his face would often turn blue and red. Crying at night is usually common behavior for babies, but this was more extreme. My parents were both sleep-deprived, and the living room still reeked of something rotten, like a dead body. So I had to sleep in my stepdad's office room. We couldn't stand being there anymore, so the next day we asked a psychic for help. When she came into our house, she walked around with one of those aroma sticks. The smoke was grayish white, as she walked from room to room, but as soon as she entered the living room, it turned black. She then started reading some prayers and spells and told us that someone was killed in this apartment. She also said that the ghosts were feeling uncomfortable with our presence, and they especially didn't like kids. Then she pointed at me and my baby brother. After she left our home, we were all terrified, so my parents called the person who we rented the apartment from and confronted him about what we just learned. To our surprise, he confessed that it was true and apologized for giving us that haunted apartment for a very cheap price. After that, we moved out and the paranormal activity was not experienced again. However, this memory gives me chills up to this day.
It's like it is a kind of a lot more to go to be watching these. I ain't know wansee Entertainment came up with some new merches.
It happened a few years ago. I was hanging out at the local mall with a couple of my friends, just chatting, as usual. All my friends had social media accounts, like Facebook or Instagram, and they would focus on it sometimes when we were goofing around together. Drake, one of my friends, was saying that he met a girl from Facebook. He also told us that he really liked her, and that he was going out with the girl that night. We joked with him that he was going to be going out with some 40-year-old man. Like those kind of jokes, you know. A couple of hours later, we had to go back home, so we all left the mall. When I got back home, I went inside my room to watch some TV. It was almost midnight when I got a text from my friend saying, "Hey, just finished the date." So I texted back, "Was he pretty?" He replied, "Very funny. Jokes aside, my car broke down and I need you to pick me up." Then he sent me an address. Well, I'm not the kind of person who ignores when my friend needs a hand. So I asked my parents if I could take the car, and they said yes. I grabbed my phone and texted again, on my way. Soon I got to the address he sent me and parked in the driveway. While I was going up the stairs, I kind of had a creepy feeling, as if I was being watched. Anyway, I rang the doorbell and heard someone say, "Come in." At first, I didn't recognize the voice. It was neither my friend's voice nor a female voice, so I just figured that it might be the girl's dad. Well, I was a bit surprised that the door was already open. But anyway, I walked in, and when I closed the door behind me, I saw this man watching TV with the girl and my friend. I said, "Hey, Drake." However, for some reason, he didn't respond. I had a strange feeling, so I slowly walked up to Drake, and I would never forget what I saw at that moment. The girl and my friend Drake were stabbed, and they were already dead. They were put in a position in a way that it looked like they were sitting, so I thought they were just watching TV like that. I looked over at the man watching TV, and I saw that he was holding a bloody knife in one hand, and my friend's phone in his other hand. He was smiling. The man turned his head toward me, stood up and said, "Hello, young man. It's your turn." I tried to run out of the door, but because he was laughing so loudly, I was terrified, and I couldn't move. But there was no choice. When he approached me, I abruptly kicked him, knocked him down, and managed to run outside. Fortunately, he didn't chase after me, but I didn't care. I just got in my car. The police arrived pretty fast. I was unable to run away that day. And my friend Drake, his face keeps coming up in my mind all the time since then.
I hope you guys are hungry because we're going to do an entire mukbang series in this little cafe. Hello.
Like, when they had ghost spirits, like, their friend, they always, like, a woman on the bus.
This happened when I was on my way to my grandmother's house. On that day, I tried to catch the jeepney because the other buses were already full at 12 a.m. I finally found a jeepney, and there were only a few people inside. There was a driver, a money collector who was hanging onto the outside of the vehicle, 2 girls, a few guys, and an old woman. We were on the road when we passed by a mental hospital. Then a lady with a hospital gown on was standing there, pointing her finger out, which meant she wanted a ride. She was bald and her face was pale white. The jeepney stopped next to her, and the inside of the car went silent. The streets were covered in fog and darkness, and the light of the jeepney was the only light source. At the time, I was texting my grandma and said that I was going to be late while glancing at the lady. However, before she stepped on the stairs of the jeepney, the driver abruptly jammed the accelerator and left her behind. I was confused. It seemed like everyone was too. When we looked over at the driver, he seemed to be so scared, but we didn't know the reason why. I asked him why he left the lady behind, and he replied with a trembling voice. He said, "She's not just a lady, ma'am." At that point, the driver looked at the rearview mirror, shut his mouth, and then increased the speed. When I followed his eyes towards the mirror, I saw it. The lady was running towards the jeepney with a weird pose and an abnormal speed. She was so fast that I couldn't see her face clearly, but her dress was visible. It was covered with blood. The collector, who was hanging outside, jumped inside and then yelled to the driver, "Faster! She's getting closer!" People inside of the jeepney were getting scared. I was the closest to the door, and out of nowhere saw the lady jump on the vehicle. She then slowly hung onto the door of the jeepney, and finally she lifted her face. She had bruises all over her face, and she was smiling at us with sharp teeth and big, deep black eyes. My heart almost stopped, and everybody in the jeepney screamed. I quickly hit her with my bag, and she tumbled down from the jeepney. However, the moment she got off, everybody in the jeepney screamed. I quickly hit her with my bag, and she tumbled down from the jeepney. However, the moment she got off, I saw her standing. She looked at me and then laughed like a demon. Not long after, the jeepney finally reached the station. Everyone hurried off the car. I got off and handed my payment to the guy. Then I went to the 7-Eleven nearby and bought some snacks to ease my nerves. I was at the counter thinking about what just happened, and then the cashier suddenly asked me, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just say that I saw a crazy lady on the road when we were riding on the jeepney," I said, and then I couldn't believe his response. "I know her. She had cancer, and the moment she lost all of her hair, she went crazy, laughing all the time, hurting herself, and even threatening to kill people. That's why her family eventually moved her out to the mental hospital. But after a week, she tried to escape, got hit by a jeepney, and died," he said. I was shocked, and goosebumps were all over my body. I asked the cashier if he still remembered the plate number of the jeepney. "Well, for my privacy, I'm not going to mention the number," but after he told me, I thanked him, got my change, and looked for the jeepney I was on. The moment I found the jeepney again, I froze. The jeepney that I rode was the same one that hit and killed the lady.
this whole time the same bus killed her. And that's probably why she want to go and tackle it like a football player. No, okay. Okay.
This incident took place in China. A female bus driver was driving when 3 bullies on the bus suddenly approached her. They began threatening her and told her to stop the bus immediately. Other passengers were ignoring the situation, but one middle-aged man stood up and tried to stop them. However, showing no mercy, they started beating him. The bullies stopped the bus, dragged the driver into the woods nearby, and after a while, returned to the bus. It was certain that the driver was sexually harassed by them. Even though she returned with a terrible look on her face, her expression was still very calm. The driver then ordered the middle-aged man to get off the bus right away. The man complained to the driver that he was the only person trying to save her, but the driver shouted that she wouldn't start until the man got off. The man resisted, but the passengers joined in and forced him out of the bus with his luggage, and then the bus started to drive off. The man was upset, but there was nothing he could do. So he just looked at the back of the bus while it left him behind. Staring at the back of the bus, he was suddenly shocked. When the bus entered the curve, it did not slow down, and then it dropped down a cliff. The bus driver didn't reduce the speed on purpose. All the passengers on the bus died, except for the man who was kicked off the bus.
Of course she ain't gonna die. I'm like, thank you for...
This is a story about a dream. There was a person who was preparing for a trip. After he bought a plane ticket, he waited a few days with excitement and finally fell asleep a day before the trip. And he had a weird dream. He saw a woman in his dream wearing a colorful jacket. Her eyes and mouth were both wide open. Then she suddenly shook her body and started to dance like a mad person. Being surprised, he finally woke up. He checked the time and then he realized that the boarding time had already passed. All of a sudden, he received a phone call from his mother while he was thinking about what he should do next. As soon as he answered the phone, he heard his mother's anxious voice. She was worried about him. Confused, he turned on the television and the news made his heart drop. The plane that he was supposed to be on had crashed. Furthermore, the airline's logo looked very familiar to him. I was bullied when I was in high school. One day, I fell asleep while in class, and when I opened my eyes, it was already dark outside. During the class, no one bothered to wake me up, so I had to leave the classroom alone. The dark hallway was scary and tears were rolling down my face. I was really sad, realizing that I was being bullied. Anyway, I was passing by a full-length mirror in the middle of the school stairs. Then, as I was walking downstairs with my cell phone's flashlight, I saw myself in the mirror by accident. And I couldn't take my eyes off of it for a while. I was not reflected on the mirror. Being confused, I looked in the mirror straight ahead this time, but still, I couldn't see myself. Staring in the mirror for a few more minutes, I then screamed and ran out of the school. Come to think of it now, I think they didn't see me in the classroom that day.
Oh, she dead. Why they ain't even just say that? Why they got, man? The reason why I know she dead, cause why would all of something it would put flowers in her desk. So she gotta be
Lambos? Private jets? Wow.
Andrew, wake up! It's my bed like that. If I ever had a big bed, I would just snuggle.
My name is Arnie. A couple of years ago in the summer, we moved into a new house that was much bigger than our old house.
Okay.
The inside of the house was very huge. Everybody was satisfied with the house. But for some reason, I couldn't get rid of the unnerving feeling. One night, I stayed up late, alone, watching some scary movies on my phone. All of a sudden, I heard what sounded like someone singing. At first, I thought maybe I was just paranoid, or it was coming from the movie I was watching. However, it kept going for like 15 minutes, even though I turned down the volume. I looked at my watch and it was almost 3 a.m. It sounded like a woman, and her voice would get very close to my room. Then it would slowly move through our halls. And then, after a few minutes, it vanished. I was creeped out, but I eventually went back to bed because nothing I could do about it. When I woke up in the morning, I asked my mother and sister if they had heard someone singing last night. They just shook their heads, and they even asked me if I was okay. I was puzzled by this. So the next night, I decided to stay up to see if the woman would sing again. Later that night, I was almost falling asleep, but then I heard it again. The time was exactly 3 a.m. I was so scared, too scared to go see who or what it was. I was pretty sure that I was the only one who was awake in the house. So I went out into the hallway quietly. And when I turned my head toward the hallway, I froze in fear. There was a woman who I've never seen before standing at the end of the long hallway and staring at me with a blank look. She was wearing a white dress, had long, straight black hair, and was singing that same bone-chilling song that I heard when I was in my room. I wanted to run back to my bed, but I couldn't move my legs for some reason. Then, the woman started slowly moving toward me. And what I noticed at that moment still gives me a chill to this day. She wasn't walking, but I could say that she was rather hovering a couple inches off the ground. As she was coming closer and closer, I could see that her mouth was almost ripping. And that was the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. I eventually passed out. And when I woke up in a panic, it was 3:30 a.m. I looked around the dark hallway, but she wasn't there anymore. Well, we still live in that house. And I've heard that dreaded singing from that woman moving throughout my house about twice a month. I told my friends about it, but no one ever believed me. I just hope that no one else has to experience this terrifying thing.
Shut up. And you know how dumb that sounds?
Here's $100,000. Wait, I can give you this $100 grand, or I can teach you how to make this every single month. You see, this is exactly what I made in my business from one.
This happened when I was around 6 years old. I was with my mom on the bus. We were on our way to my grandmother's house. The bus was pretty quiet and empty, but there was an old man sitting in front of me. The bus soon reached a bus stop, and a few passengers got on. However, suddenly, the old man who was sitting in front of me started screaming out of nowhere and then fell flat on his face. All of the people on the bus were concerned, and eventually, the bus driver stopped the bus and called the police and an ambulance. They came shortly after. A moment later, something unbelievable happened. The police arrested a man who was on the bus. To my surprise, he turned out to be a serial killer who was wanted for a very long time. The old man who had fallen started screaming because he found a woman's head inside of the killer's bag. This happened during finals week. My friend and I got hungry while studying late at night, so we decided to go to a restaurant nearby that was open late at night. We ordered food and sat near the window. My friend was looking out the window while she was talking to me, and then she suddenly stopped. She didn't say anything, but pointed at the window with a trembling finger. "What?" I asked, as I turned my head towards the window. And as soon as I did, my eyes focused on a couple of people outside. I instantly froze. Somehow, my friend and I were standing outside staring at us. They smiled at us for a while, and then they blended in and disappeared with the rest of the people outside. Our food came out, and my friend and I couldn't eat at all. We eventually rushed out of the restaurant. Who were those two people we saw that day, and why did they look exactly like us?
Because they the devils, they ghosts.
This happened to me when I was young. One day, I was home alone, and I was running the washing machine in the laundry room. When the first load was done, I took out all the laundry. I turned around, and then I saw a lady standing right in front of me. She was a middle-aged woman, and she was smiling at me. I almost fainted at that moment, thinking that it must have been my imagination. But unfortunately, the lady was still standing there. For some reason, I couldn't move my body. I was about to cry. Then the lady suddenly started running around the living room and was laughing out loud. It turned out that my home security system wasn't properly locked, so the woman managed to sneak inside. The woman was caught by a security guard who came to our house after hearing the security alarm go off. She was later arrested by the police. Later on, the investigation confirmed that the woman was not caught on the elevator security camera, which meant that the woman walked up the stairs all the way to the 15th floor, opening each door one by one to see if any were open.
Oh yeah, she weird. Open all them doors like that. What's wrong with you? Hey, this is a new
When I was 6 years old, I went shopping for clothes with my dad.
Okay.
I had a good time with him, and everything was fine until I noticed that a man was staring at me. He was a tall, white, and kind of weird-looking dude who was probably around in his 30s. Then he started smiling at me more creepily.
I wish I could talk to characters on this video, cause I would really tell them what to do, and like I wish that could have happened, so they could do what they got.
My head kept saying, "What's wrong with that man?" I told my dad right away, but he reassured me that it wasn't a big deal. So I shrugged it off and soon forgot about him.
Like that, what's wrong with you?
A few minutes later, we were at the checkout area, and I heard the voice of someone whispering. I turned my head back, and I saw the same man that I'd seen before. He was smiling again, and tossed me a candy. I usually don't accept stuff from strangers because my dad won't let me. But this time, my dad wasn't looking at me, so I took it. When we got home, I went up to my room, sat down, and opened the candy wrapper. However, there was a folded note instead of candy. It said, "Careful." Being a young and careless kid, I just thought it was some kind of prank and ignored it. A few weeks later, it was the holidays, so my mom went to a party and my dad was busy with work. I had to stay home alone, but that also meant I could do whatever I wanted to. So I was watching YouTube, eating my snacks until about 9 p.m. I started to feel tired watching YouTube, and then I heard some noises outside. I got scared, so I took my phone and ran to my parents' room, as it was the safest room in my house. I quickly locked the door. My parents' room had a monitor where I could check the security cameras, so I tried to look who was outside. However, I could only see red on the screen. I thought it was strange, so I quickly rewound for about 5 minutes. And what I saw was shocking. It was that man who I'd seen at the shopping mall. He was just standing there, holding a can of spray paint for a minute or so. And then he suddenly started spraying all the cameras. Just then, I heard small knocking noises. Hiding in my parents' closet, I tried to call my parents, but no one answered. Then I called the police, thinking that it might be my last chance, and explained to them my current situation completely. Fortunately, the police arrived in just 5 minutes. They searched our whole house, and they finally found him hiding in the attic. After they arrested and investigated him, it turned out that the man had trailed me that day when I got the candy from him. He already knew where I lived, so he made a plan to steal some valuables from our house. They also found apparent evidence that he was even going to try to do some bad things to me. Well, I'm just glad I survived. However, to this day, it's agonizing just recalling the moment when I saw his face through the camera.
Hey. Now. Alright. Probably the end of the video. Wansee Entertainment. So I don't know what these hoodies like. I know I ain't probably like these. I ain't special about that. But anyways, so I'm done with this. Reacting to all of these Wansee Entertainment videos. So I'm trying to see if they gonna make some more, and I don't know if they could or not, but I'm just saying. And make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, comment down below what was the scariest video so far, and be safe from Corona and get this hand sanitizer, and make sure you don't get a cut around your even though that's still gonna burn and heal. And plus, so yeah, done with it. And do some more. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and I always want to like. I always get like 1 or 2, and that sucks. I wish I had 1 million, like a song or something. But anyways, look, y'all, see y'all like, peace.